Welcome! This is what this video is about. Creating CrossView images in Blender with just a few button clicks. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a few moments while I tell you that CrossView is a way to put the left channel of stereoscopic images into the viewer's right eye and the right channel into their left eye. Stereoscopic images on the cell phone through VR devices put the left channel to the left eye, but it requires a device to help focus, and it limits the size the image can be. CrossView allows the viewer to cross their eyes and focus the image. The better the viewer can do that, the larger the image can be. The restriction on the image we create is that it will be a square image, duplicated side by side, so the viewer can look at their two-dimensional device, whether it's a phone or a computer screen or their smart TV, and experience the image we make in Blender in 3D, stereoscopic vision. Sometimes stereoscopic images are easy to focus on, sometimes hard to focus on. But Blender allows for the creation in both Eevee and Cycles. This is how Cycles renders the first of two virtual cameras. If rendering two virtual cameras to create stereoscopic images in Eevee or Cycles sounds like something you'd be interested in, this might be the video for you. Get ready. Hello, hi, hola, handle and greeting. Blender 2.80, you'll see that I press File, Defaults, load factory settings, and confirm that to dial it all the way back. Where is my Windows stuff up here for minimize, restore, and close? Well, it's gone because I toggle window full screen and then it just remembers to make it go away. The navigation that I prefer includes auto depth and zooming to the mouse position, and the add-ons that I think I might play with today include the sapling tree generator, and that's pretty much it. So I also enjoy having these flipped to the right side, so that's a right click, flip to right. Now we are going to use our default cube, and this is a challenge. A two-dimensional space is something that a lot of people, I can't tell what the reception is going to be for this video. I'm going to select the camera, like I'm really excited. Alt-G to clear any grabbing movement, and Alt-R to undo any rotation, and now it points straight down, but RX90 will point it up, and GY will grab it and move it along the Y axis. When I press 0, I look through that camera. Shift and the accent, or the grave, or the tilde, or the squiggly line puts you into walking and flying, and then Q, E, A, S, D, W take care of the rest of that. For movement, first person style, which I'm actually not very good at. Okay, so we have something, and then decimal on the keyboard here, something very basic, which is a cube. I'm going to make a couple other cubes. I don't need to see through that cube. I'm deactivating X-ray, and I'm going to press GZ1 and enter on the number pad just to put it right to the top. Now I'm going to make a duplicate of this a couple times and just sort of throw it around 5 times. So Shift D to duplicate, Shift Z to constrain the movement of that duplicate on the X and Y axis. I'm omitting the Z axis from movement. Shift D to duplicate, Shift Z. Shift Z, Shift D, Shift Z. I wanted 5, so through the camera it looks like this. Now Shift and the grave, or grave maybe? I don't know if that's what language I should be pronouncing that in. And so this is basically what I'm going to start with. 3D view enjoys corners, but what about 3D view? This defaulted to the Eevee render engine. It has something on the next tab. We want to change the resolution to 960 squared. They're both 960. That was click and drag, and then type in 960 and press enter. Aspect ratio is 1:1. Render region will save us a little computation in the future. The next option down here is stereoscopy. Let's call it stereoscope. If I click that, you can see it instantly does a red-green separation. If I click on the red border here that represents the render border through the camera, and I go into the Cameras tab, it lets me change the lens, it lets me do a couple other things, but there's nothing to do with stereoscopy until I enable stereoscopy. Now there's everything to do with stereoscopy. What kind of mode? I'm going to recommend to you toe in. And that imagines two virtual cameras and their eyes crossing to converge on the item upon which they are focused. It's what you and I do with both of our eyes. The converge plane distance is represented by this black plane, which happens to be a square because our dimensions are a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. If we print out different dimensions with the resolution, that convergence plane mimics exactly the average of what the camera will see. We put it farther, and there the convergence plane hits the first cube that we made. It is 12.3 blender meters away. Okay? And that represents the two-dimensional media that will display two images that the viewer will then, in this case, cross their eyes so their brain overlaps those two images and creates the sense of 3D. So what this means when the convergence plane is up at the front of the scene is that things will appear to be behind your computer screen. Well, I want you to put this in the back of your scene. If you click and drag, it won't go beyond 15 meters. Can I type in 18? Yes, I can. And then I click and drag again, and it stops me at 20 meters. But if I enter 21, I can continue clicking and dragging beyond 21 meters. It's a little weird, isn't it? I don't know. It's just something that I had to tell you because it's something that I noticed. So the convergence plane is 20 meters away from the camera. These houses, which are arguably... Oh, by the way, they're going to be houses. These cubes, which are arguably 2 meters tall, are 2 blender units tall. So we are beginning to think about scale. That's important because how far in the air is that? How far away from the subject is that? Once those things are known, and you're looking through the camera, we talk about interocular distance. An interocular distance of 1 meter means your eyes, or two virtual cameras, are 1 meter apart. The default was 0.065, which is, I don't remember how many inches or whatever. It's pretty much human. And so you can see the red-green separation is very tiny on this front cube. With the convergence plane in back, that means the front cube has the most distortion of all these cubes. With the interocular distance of 0.065, you can see what a tiny separation there is. Now, next big thing before we really go cruising through this. I can click and drag to change the distance between the eyes, but you'll notice that something peculiar is happening. Red cubes are facing me, and other cubes are sort of dashing weirdly off to the left. It's because the pivot is the left virtual camera. We could use the right virtual camera as a pivot. What I would prefer that you do is have the pivot between the two cameras, the bridge of your nose. So both cameras move the same distance away from the center when you change your interocular distance. And the reason that's good is because you can use this technique and go visit an old scene that you've created. As long as you change, or you're comfortable changing, the resolution to something square, then you can get away with showing a portion of your old scene in 3D, stereoscopic. I am, this is a bad pun, but I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You know what, let's times 10 it. From 0.065 to 0.65. Totally disregarding that means that I'm like Godzilla right now. When I press F12, I will render, and the display of that render I want in the image renderer, whatever that means. So here's this. I want to save it. That's Alt-S, and I'll just overwrite something I did before. Stereo 3D, side by side, cross-eyed. Enter. Here it is, and I'm now going to open it with something that's easy and convenient. And it has put the two 960 by 960 images side by side to create one image. It's very challenging to cross your eyes and see anything good here because the light is weird. There's no shadows, there's no ground, there's no context for 3D. And that separation is awfully hard. I'm good at this, and it's kind of challenging for me. So now I said we were going to rock it. Let's rock it. I'm going to press F11, get back into my 3D view. I'm going to select, shift select all of these and change my pivot point to individual origins and rotate on the Z 45 degrees so that I could see corners. Corners are much easier for the brain to handle when it comes to aligning the separate images. Going back to median point so I don't lose my place with that. Alt-A can deselect everything in the new Blender 2.8. Shift-A to create a mesh, in this case a plane, S25 to make it big, 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 big. Enter on the number pad, and that is our ground, which is now Z8 for rendered view. Going to give us shadows. This light is something that I want to Shift-Z so I can move it closer to the camera. Like all good photography, it just kind of happens to be maybe over your shoulder instead of behind the subject. Moving it down so that shadows from that light source spread across the scene and hit the far objects. Great. Now I'm gonna select this and give it a material. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna call that material R, and I'm gonna I'm gonna click on Principled, press the letter D, and it changes it to diffuse. That's a shortcut. Nice and easy. R means red. Neat. They've all changed, but I didn't select all of them. Something that Blender 2.80 does, which may or may not be handy for you. Handy for us right now because I can now select one, make a copy of its material, change the name, in this case Y, and now I'm changing the color of a copy. I'm going to do that for all of them. So you'll see the number of users for that material will go down as I make copies, and that's really all I have to say about that. CMYK, by the way, is where I got the idea for that K for black. That's a printer's thing. I think you probably knew that. Blue and copy G for green. I'm just happy doing it this way. You don't have to do it this way, but now we have something a little bit more interesting. F12 to render, and here it is in our image editor. Alt because we did it here, which is shadows. Art school. So that phrase right there is worth thousands of dollars. Let's put the camera back together. So I'm going to click on the border here, and that gives me access to the camera. I'm going to click on the camera tab, and I'm going to close this, maybe divide it by 2. So divide by 2, we'll give that a whirl. And I also said we were going to change the output permanently. So just like we've been doing in the save image dialog here over on, I don't know what this is. Maybe it's a tool. Yeah, it is. I press the letter T and it comes and goes. So I guess that's the toolbox for save image. We can make it permanent by switching to stereo, changing it to side by side, and doing cross-eyed. I hope you guys can do cross-eyed. There are a lot of things online where cross-eyed is totally the way to go, and you get all access to these 3D simulated images, and it fools your brain, so that's good enough, right? I'm going to make a duplicate of one of these because, or I'm going to do a whatever, Alt-D to make an instant duplicate or clone or something. And so if I change the settings on one, say 900 watts instead of 1,000, the other also changes to 900 from 1,000. I am going to dip this down, and I am going to brighten up my background because I've learned that it's nice to do so. That way the lights don't carry all of the weight of the scene. Now, one last time, a render, an Alt-S to save, enter, it's untitled, that's fine, go in, right-click, open with, and there it is. Now, I cross my eyes, I take a look, and it's just enough depth that you have the basics of what's going on. I'm going to now show new users something fun with modeling. Older users may get a kick out of this. I'm going to take this front cube, press the number 2, and I'm going to right-click it and say subdivide. And then I can either go down here and take care of the subdivisions, or I can press F9. And I'm going to control mouse wheel upward so that I get 4 subdivisions. That's fantastic. I'm pressing 3. Decimal on the number pad so I can just take a look at it. And you know what I think I'm going to do? Tab into object mode and press the slash button. Everything's gone. When I look through the camera, everything's gone. When I press 0 to look again at the 3D view, everything is still gone. When I render it, everything is there. Yes. It's called something, and I forget what, and it's kind of interesting. So now I can just focus on what I need to focus. I will press the number 3 and then select and shift select the following polygons. Dun 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 dun. Now, the only way to do this, because there's no shortcut key, is to make sure that you have face select mode enabled, right click and extrude the individual faces. Bravo, man. Those individual faces are things I would like to give a new material. I'll create the parking space for a new material. I will now create a new material, and I will name it Frame. I will assign Frame to my selected polygons. I will click on Principled, press the letter D to change it to Diffuse as a surface type, and I will lower this to a very desaturated brown that is dark. This will be like the frame of a window, and windows imply another material. So a new parking space, a new material, a new name, and then the letter E this time, changing that to an emission that is warm. I mentioned chiaroscuro as something that helps give a sense of depth. Before I finish that sentence, the letter I will inset our frame, and now I will extrude individual faces again. Oh, I'm so close. You know what? I will do that farther away. I will make sure that I am at a safe distance away from all of those selected cubes, and I will right-click and extrude individual faces. I think I've done something a little weird. No, that's right. Okay, good. That's how I wanted it. And I will assign lights. So what I've done, if you can even tell, there we go. This is the inside. So the frame takes up a little right angle, and then the light of a window is there. Great. Now, 3, select, 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 select. If I extrude individual, I will get a slice right here. Holy moly. I didn't mean to select like that. Control Z, Control Z. So if I extrude with the letter E, and if I choose one of these axes, damn thing's just not working. So there's another option which is wonderful. You can right-click it and extrude faces along normals. That's exactly what we need, because these normals are off-axis. Being off-axis is not a crime, but it does make things darn hard when you've turned your model sideways. There we go. That is, for the time being, our model. This brings everyone back home. Now it looks a little bit like a home, but don't homes have roofs? One final trick, okay? And then we're going to like add a tree or something simple. I'm going to press Control R and I'm going to add a center line. That center line is going to provide for a roof. How? 3 to select, with a circle select, that was the letter C, faces along the roof, the top. Right click, assign, whatever, roof material, and now Shift H to hide everything about that model that is not selected. Press 2, and now Alt select that center line we just made. And now enable proportional editing, the linear fall off. Have a look down that roof line. Let me focus it again. That was the slash button to get rid of the house behind it, because they just so happened to line up, and it was a little too confusing. GZ. Lift your roof and then move your mouse wheel so that the corner of the roof that touches the house just barely moves. Find the angle or pitch that you are happiest with. Great. You made a roof. Now select that whole roof and separate it by selection. Now press that, press everything, gee whiz. Alt H and the divided sign and tab to go into object mode, and now select just that roof object and give it, if you would, a modifier called solidify. Make the offset of solidify a positive offset. Grow the thickness. Oh, okay, it's an afro roof. That's cool, but it's not hanging over. It's just sort of sitting there all dumb. Hide the view of that for a minute. Tab into edit mode, and now the final modeling trick, I promise. This is the final modeling trick. Press 2 to make sure you're in edge select mode. Select the whole roof, which is now its own object, and shift select one of the apex pieces. It doesn't matter which one. You could even do this one, doesn't matter. I do the center one because it's tidy. And now instead of using the median point as a pivot point, you could use the active element as a pivot point. And all I have to do with proportional editing turned off is press S to scale up the size of the roof. And now it nicely hangs over. The apex remains the same, which means the two geometries don't crash into each other. And when I review my roof, it hangs over, it looks wonderful, it's fine and dandy. I come into object mode, I apply it, I now shift select this little house object and Control J to join them, and they are one single object looking like a little house. Gosh, I sure would like other little houses. Okay, this is the final trick. I think I may have made a mistake when I told you what the final trick was. I hope you're enjoying this, because I had such a good time. Okay, we need copies of this thing all over the place. We need 1, 2, 3, 4 copies, and I want them to appear right in those spaces. I press Home to maximize the view of this camera that I'm looking through, but really I can just get down and do this at the model. Shift D is how I make a copy, so Shift D. Oh cool, Shift D, Shift D. It's fun. Shift D, it's really fun actually. They're floating in space, they're nowhere near where they ought to be. Well, how about this? Let's play once again with this button for pivot point. Now let's affect only the origins of objects. If I want this house, which I've selected, to this red cube, which I shift select, I have to scale with the letter S and 0 on the number pad and enter, and I can put it right there as though a strong magnet were connecting the two. And now what I'll do is go into the materials of the house, and I will simply change the Y to an R. I'll select here until it's obvious that I have the cube selected, and I'll get rid of it. Now I've got a red house where once there was a red cube. Get it? Select the duplicate that you want to move, shift select the object where you want it to go to, where its origin is in the correct location, of course. Scale with the letter S, 0 on your number pad, enter. So now you've scaled it right there into the correct spot, and then do whatever it is that you have to do. In this case, I'm changing a Y to a K, which is like a charcoal-y thing, and I'm getting rid of that, and doing this, and do that, and do this, do that, that. Then I take this, and I click over here, and I click here, and I do this, and then I do that, and X, and Enter. See? It's truly that easy. And if I didn't press 0, I would just do slow collision, which looks pretty good. I don't know what just happened. Hang on a second. There we go. S0, not just 0, 0. Now I want to make this green. I go into yellow, change that. Okay, that's the part where maybe it gets a little boring. All right, X and that. Ta-da, houses. I now must remember, as a responsible user, to deselect the weird non-normal changes, non-default changes that I've made. Now that it's just back to median point and it's not only origins. But you know what? I do want only origins. And I don't need only origins. RZ90. Now we have doors and stuff facing different ways, and I kind of want this to be a little bit more visible. G, Shift Z, there it goes back there. I like this little thing. I like this little house. I like this little scene. Shift, grave, up. Oh, that jump. There it is. There's a bug. You go into fly mode and you press one of the ASWD keys, or Q or E to go up or down. Not in that order. It's Q and E is down and up. And it jumps. The camera jumps 90 degrees to the right or left. That is something that I'm sure happens to other people, but I haven't seen anyone talk about it. Lower is usually better, but I'm going to put a tree in here. And this pretty much is the extent of what you've got. One final thing, if you are still with me, that was Eevee. I am using Cycles. What do you think is going to happen when I press my left mouse click button to commit to this change? I will see a rendered view of the red-green split that represents the interocular distance for the output, right? Well, you're kind of right. It tries to show me both of them at the same time. I have tried, and hell or high water, I cannot figure out how to duplicate Blender's 3D view and look through one camera and look through the other camera to get a live view of the cross-eyed side-by-side output. I just can't figure it out. If that method exists, I don't know it. But this is what Cycles does. And if you ever want to test your performance for Cycles, I had fun doing this, go down to the viewport and examine the difference in start pixels. You could do the 1, the 2, see the bigger pixels, the 4, see the big chunky pixels right here? And you could do the 8, and you could really examine what your video card is capable of. And so put it to automatic, and then you could start changing the start pixels. The 32 size start pixels, 16 pixel size start pixels. It flickers back and forth between virtual cameras faster, but man, is it ugly. The default was 64. Going beyond that is 128. And then it's a little bit slower, but it's a little tidy. Whatever the case. I just thought that was kind of fun. It's one of the few ways that you could sort of do a live check of the performance of your video card. I happen to know the following. I happen to know, let me stop this thing, Z2. That's a developer, whatchamacallit, view, developer view, is that what it is? Look dev. Let's just make stuff up. Here's F11. Look at this. An important thing about 3D and drawing is that shadows touch. I am not going to sit here and mess around with the settings, with the shadow settings for these lamps. I'm just ignoring it, and I am going to go now to what I have found is a good ideal setting for Cycles. It is 256 on the render. It is making the tiles 1/4 of the size of the output. So you may have seen I did 960 divided by 4, and I got 240, 240. And also, wherever that other thing is, the, I always lose this because I don't use it very much. The denoising, the default settings tend to produce a pretty good view just like that. Now I'm going to go in, I'm going to create a tree. There's the tree. I'm going to press F9 because I could do it up here instead of doing it here. This thing doesn't move around, but F9 will appear wherever you kind of want it to appear. I do want it beveled. I do, however, want branch splitting to go one more level. I do also perhaps want it smaller. which is here, and I'll do a 3.5, I think. Yeah, so this is the tree that's sort of in the houses. I don't need a lot of leaves. The danger of too much noise in your image for 3D is that the viewers will cross their eyes or not cross their eyes and use a Google Cardboard, perhaps, on their media device, and all of these busy edges will confuse the alignment, let's call it. The alignment will be too confused, and you'll get like a false depth. I don't know. That used to happen to me when I was a kid with the telephone wires. I would walk into the telephone wire because I thought it was another 12 inches before I had to move the telephone wire. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but sure as hell made sense to me. It changed my life. Now, in the 21st century, I still remember telephone wires. Okay, you see I changed that to a sky texture, and I chose pre-tham. You know what I didn't do, which I'd really like to do, is I would like to give this a material that is dark and not stark white. Hey, frame, good job. Now I will go to this, and guess what? Also frame. Alt-A deselects everything. Voila, F12 to render. There are the tiles, and there's red. You think that what comes after red would be green and blue, but you'd be wrong. It's kind of fascinating that Cycles renders it this way. It just finished up. That was a very long 6 minutes for me, and now I finally get to take a look at it. But here, see that corner? See all the shadows touching? If you remember earlier my comment about that. One, to look at it full size, shift home to properly center it back in your screen after you've done all this weird stuff. Now, let's see if I like it. A 6-minute investment. The camera is not facing straight. There's a danger. Your horizon skips if your camera's not quite facing straight. And, all right, let me cross my eyes here while I talk. Okay, that's kind of a hard one. If you're not good at doing that cross-eyed view, the cross view, this one might be a little bit of a challenge, but when you do it, it's not awful. Unfortunately, the shadows I have in here are not very strong. Part of the idea was that I put trees in front of the lights so that you get this texture of shadow on the side of the building, because then you really sort of get an impression of depth. And then this tree should have a stronger shadow here on this blue house. I'm not dissatisfied, but it's not like I'm doing this because I want to see the perfect finished image. That's great. So, I hope that you got something out of the process. It was a lot of fun to sort of do this. I love CrossView. I absolutely love that stuff. And this one, too. I'll boost up the emit. I'll keep tweaking this. You guys are great. Thanks awfully. I hope that you meet with nothing but success, and you have a wonderful time doing it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for leaving happy comments and questions, your subscriptions, and thanks for watching.